They had moved down here in the 70s, and soon after my mom had me, and while she was pregnant, she didn't have the resources to get a crib and baby food and the essentials for when I came along. And if it weren't for the neighbors and the Mennonite neighbors that we had out in Kieseltown, we wouldn't have had that support. And it is one of the main reasons my family has really involved themselves in this community and cared about their community, is because they were given so much love and support when they first moved here. And it is because of places like Community Mennonite. Shout out to those who let us use this space as well. But it's places and support like this and where neighbors care about each other, and it's the reason why most of you are here today. It's the reason why I'm here today. We're gathered here tonight as neighbors and community members who care about safety, accountability, and the protection of personal privacy. This session is an opportunity to learn more about automatic license plate readers, or ALPRs, and to better understand what their presence could mean for our community. Many of us are here because we have serious and legitimate questions. For example, why does law enforcement or agency need the ability to track where and when people work, shop, worship, seek medical care, or take their children to school? Where is this data stored? How long is it retained? Who has access to it? Who is it shared with? What safeguards, if any, are in place to prevent misuse? And how were decisions about installing this system made? And how did we not know about it when it came around? These are reasonable questions, and asking them does not mean we are against public safety. It means we care enough about both safety and civil liberties to want clear answers. In a community like Harrisonburg, trust matters. Surveillance carries real risks and deserves public scrutiny. Tonight, we are here to take an honest and informed look at these issues. We'll be hearing from Rob Pogenclass, Executive Director from Justice Forward. Justice Forward is a nonpartisan advocacy organization created to bring attention to the urgent need for criminal justice reform in the Commonwealth, and to advance legislation and advocate for comprehensive changes to Virginia's criminal legal system. Got there. Rob has been studying ALPRs in Virginia for years and will help walk us through the broader concerns surrounding ALPR technology, including privacy, data collection, oversight, and the potential impact on all of us. Thank you again for being here and for taking an interest in this issue. Conversations like this are happening in communities across the country, and it is important that Harrisonburg has the chance to engage thoughtfully and openly as well. We ask that you please hold your questions until the end of the presentation. We'll have a short Q&A. And if you wish to help offset the cost of this event, there are collection baskets that will go around, and someone will repeat this later. Collection baskets, or you can use the Venmo on your programs. Also, bathrooms are behind me in this hallway as well, and if you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you so much for being here, and with that, I'll turn it over to Rob. Thank you, Rob.
Good evening. This is amazing. My name is Rob Pogenclass, Executive Director of Justice Forward Virginia. I think she introduced our organization well. I'll just add, we've been overhauling Virginia's criminal legal system since 2017 when we were started, doing things like ending mandatory jury sentencing, limiting police stops for minor equipment violations, also known as racist policing. We passed the only statewide ban on that practice in the country back in 2020. We've been doing probation reform, ending presumptions against bail, and a lot of other, ending the indiscriminate shackling of kids in juvenile court was a reform we got passed last year. So if you hear about things like that, we're usually involved. In Virginia, the majority of people charged with crimes rely on indigent defenders. We are public defender led, so we see those injustices up close, and that gives us the expertise to make the necessary changes. So we draft our own legislation, and then we give it to the lawmakers to hopefully get through the General Assembly. Today, we're going to be discussing the state of mass surveillance in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This presentation, by the way, I've been going right through it, haven't I? This presentation is now on our foundation website, so you can go and find this information afterwards at justiceforwardvirginiafoundation.org and click on surveillance, and you'll see this presentation there. Okay, I'm going to get started. This normally takes me 60 minutes. I'm going to do it in 30. This is the position of our organization on mass surveillance, just so we're clear from the outset. It is impossible to overstate how grim and harmful mass surveillance is, but anyone who has read George Orwell's 1984 or seen Tom Cruise in Minority Report can tell you why it's a bad idea. The use of mass surveillance technology by law enforcement and other agencies infringes on fundamental privacy rights and risks further exacerbating mass incarceration and racial disparities in our criminal legal system. Mass surveillance technology creates an enormous opportunity for abuse of unimaginable scale. Virginia should end mass surveillance. Our lawmakers should be protecting the lives, liberty, and interests of the people they represent, not the predatory private companies whose technology invades our private lives and pushes Virginia further into a police state. As Nadia said, this is about public safety, but I would argue we're the ones trying to keep the people safe.
Yes.
Not the other way around. Okay, here's an overview of the presentation. I'm going to talk about what ALPRs are, because there's some confusion about that. Understandably so. There's a lot of cameras up in the world. So we got to figure out what ALPRs are, how do law enforcement use them, how do they abuse them. Unfortunately, this is the longest part of the presentation. ALPRs, we'll do a quick history of ALPRs in Virginia. Then my colleague, Stephen Keener, who's a professor at CNU, is going to talk about a study he did on geospatial analysis of ALPRs in Hampton Roads, where there's over 600 of these cameras in the 7 cities. We're going to talk about I'll come back to talk about why we oppose ALPRs, what communities like Harrisonburg are doing to push back against them, and then we'll take some time for question and answer. Okay. What are automated license plate readers? They are high-speed AI-enabled cameras with image processing software to identify vehicles and pinpoint their location. They can be mobile, which means they can be in police vehicles, or they can be stationary. Typically, when we're talking about flock cameras, we're talking about the stationary ones. The stationary cameras are on 24/7, 365 days a year. They're taking photos constantly of every vehicle that passes by them. They take a photo of the rear of the vehicle, which captures the license plate. It's then converted into machine-readable text. The picture will also include the make, the model, the color, any occupants in the back of the vehicle, the interior, the bumper sticker, any distinguishing characteristics. The search that can be used for the vehicle can then focus on any one of those things. If I want to search for a gray minivan, I can find it there. These images and license plate text are then paired with information on the date, the time, and the GPS location of the vehicle at that time. All of that is put into the database. Okay. ALPRs are a digital dragnet. They capture license plate data of all the vehicles scanned, not just those associated with criminal investigations. Database entries can number in the billions, and they do. ALPR databases may be maintained by law enforcement, other government agencies, regional sharing systems, we'll talk about those, or by private companies. The data can be collected, and it can be stored indefinitely. In Virginia, ALPRs are most frequently marketed to law enforcement by Flock Safety, which is a $7.5 billion tech startup funded by Peter Thiel. You might know him from Palantir, and others. They gave a $250 million grant at the beginning, back in 2017. Flock is now $7.5 billion. The private data collected of millions of people who have not committed any crime at all is then uploaded into Amazon web servers. Okay, according to the Virginia State Crime Commission, law enforcement use ALPRs for 2 primary purposes. One is alerts. sort of real-time notifications to the officer when they hit a license plate that they're looking for. And then the other is criminal investigations, which is looking back in time for license plates that did not hit originally. The alerts are real-time notifications of license plates, vehicles of interest based on a hot list. The hot lists are entirely created by law enforcement. And as far as we can tell, there is no regulation of what goes on a hot list. So if law enforcement decides your vehicle plate needs to go on a hot list, it goes on the hot list. It's a customized list of vehicle license plates that are of interest to law enforcement. By adding a license plate, officers can use ALPRs to identify or track particular vehicles in real time. So for example, the FBI extracts vehicle data from this list of folks that you can see on there. Anyone who's on a sex offender registry, anyone who might have violated their probation or be suspected of having violated their probation, etc. Investigations, so this is going back in time. This is a search of historical ALPR data to identify or locate vehicles of interest. The search can be conducted using data captured from a single ALPR device or a network of devices to develop leads. So if they want to track you across time and space using a number of different cameras, they're able to do that. The network of devices can include ALPR data not only from law enforcement, but shared between law enforcement and private entities. So if you see a camera in your Home Depot or your Lowe's in the middle of the parking lot, they can contribute their ALPR data to the law enforcement system. HOAs can do the same thing. Since ALPRs typically collect information on everyone, not just the hot listed vehicles, law enforcement agencies can use a plate, a partial plate, a temporary plate, the issuing state, the vehicle information, again, make, model, color, vehicle information, unique characteristics, or a physical address. They can just search one address and then look at that over a given period of time to search and analyze historical data. For example, an officer may enter the location of a gas station, identify vehicles seen nearby at the time of the alleged crime, and then the officer can then run all of those plates back as long as they have the data for it. ALPR data feeds into real-time crime centers. I did not tell you that this would be a fun presentation or a cheery presentation. I'm just going to give you as much information as I can. Real-time crime centers serve as live central dashboard for law enforcement agencies to review surveillance tech in real time. They operate 24/7. They combine a countrywide network of license plate readers, DOT cameras, police cameras, body-worn cameras, community-based camera feeds, businesses, HOA cameras, tip-based crime solver programs, gunshot detection notifications, drones, because we now have first responder drones in Virginia. So when you call 911, a drone shows up instead of a person. That's in Fairfax and Manassas. 911 calls and more. There are 9 real-time crime centers. Not one here, but we do have them, Fairfax, Culpeper, Richmond, and Hampton Roads. In addition to real-time crime centers, there are 79 fusion centers across the country, 2 in Virginia. This is designed for combination work, joint task force work between state and local law enforcement and the federal government. So that's where there's sharing between state and local and the federal government, including DHS. This surveillance apparatus is rapidly growing. Flock Safety and other ALPR companies are adding to their surveillance portfolios, introducing new surveillance tech to integrate, for example, first responder drones, ALPRs for schools, particularly school drop-off lines, biometrics, so facial recognition technology, Ring, which formerly partnered with Flock Safety until their partnership became public and then it got real bad for them. I think the Super Bowl commercial may have had something to do with that. Allows users to share their home camera footage with police as police departments across the country seek to normalize this kind of surveillance sharing. In Richmond, the Commonwealth's attorney is going to community meetings urging people to share their Ring camera footage with the Richmond Real-Time Crime Center so that they can have all that video and then go back and investigate from that. Flock's new AI-powered features claim to, quote, uncover key insights that, when triangulated with other statistical data, can reveal patterns of activity associated with criminal events that analysts can use to establish probabilities of their crimes and locations. if this sounds like Minority Report, I had to go back and watch Minority Report again. This is Minority Report. This is what the movie was talking about, predicting future crime. This is what Garrett Langley, the CEO of deFlock, thinks that he can do. He says it publicly, he says it on YouTube, you can go watch his videos. He thinks he can end crime in America by creating a surveillance state. That is his goal, his stated goal. Proponents of ALPRs and the growing surveillance tech lobby claim they are able to prevent crimes yet to be committed by rolling out these predictive policing tools and relying on algorithms to predict future crimes. Okay. I'm going to talk about the abuses. I'm not going to list them all, but I want to list as many as I can so that you see the breadth of abuse of this particular technology. And again, just talking about ALPRs here. But ALPRs do go back quite a ways. It's only in the last 7 or 8 years, really since deFlock came along and has expanded this technology cheaply and quickly by coming in, selling it to city councils before they even really know what they're doing, and approving it and getting the cameras up, that we've seen the massive proliferation of it. But ALPRs have been in Virginia for at least 30 years. The state police has had them dating back to at least the 90s. So in 1998, a Washington, D.C. police officer pleaded guilty to extortion after looking at the plates of vehicles near a gay bar and blackmailing the vehicle owners. During the 2008 election, Virginia State Police used ALPRs to collect information about people attending rallies for candidates Sarah Palin and Barack Obama, and later targeted vehicles crossing from Virginia into Washington for Obama's inauguration. In 2010, Immigration and Customs Enforcement enlisted police officers to use ALPRs to gather information about gun show customers. This is not a partisan issue. We have as many, I think, conservatives who are concerned about this as we do progressives. In 2012, an Associated Press report found the NYPD to have deliberately scanned every vehicle parked near mosques in New York and New Jersey, targeting religious minorities and communities of color. In 2015, Texas police created a hot list with the names of people with outstanding court fees in an effort to pull those drivers over and then offer them a bargain. They could get arrested, or they could pay the original fine with an extra 25% processing fee tacked on, and then that processing fee would go to the vendor of the ALPR. In 2017, a Centerville, Virginia man was shot and killed by police after his car was flagged by an ALPR hit for an alleged probation violation. So we're talking about summary execution for alleged crimes. In 2021, Aurora, Colorado police forced a black woman and her family of 4 young girls aged 6, 12, 14, and 17 to lie on the ground in a prone position, handcuffed and at gunpoint, after an ALPR misidentified her car as stolen. Although the ALPR correctly read the plate, the officers failed to confirm that the woman's SUV matched the description of the stolen vehicle, which was in fact not an SUV at all, but a motorcycle with the same plate number from a different state. In 2023, domestic violence. Kansas, a police chief used deFlock cameras to stalk their ex-partners. In this case, the man used deFlock cameras to check for his ex-girlfriend's whereabouts 164 times and her new boyfriend's whereabouts 64 times. The officer had been with the department since September 2020, just about all of that time as chief. Mistakes. In 2024, police in Ohio, you may have read about this case, released a canine on a man after the ALPR did identify the wrong car and license plate. I think it misread a 2 as a 7 or vice versa. He was placed under detention. He was put on the curb and kept asking why he was being arrested. He didn't understand. They released a canine on him who mauled him, and the man lost the use of one of his arms. Private sharing. This year we learned that Home Depot and Lowe's are sharing their data from hundreds of AI-powered automated license plate readers with law enforcement. Immigration. In 2025, local police around the country started performing lookups in deFlock's ALPR database for immigration-related searches, and as part of other ICE investigations, giving federal law enforcement side door access to a tool that it did not have a contract for. In Virginia, last year, February to June, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which had a pre-existing agreement to use, to access Richmond's ALPR database, was using it for immigration searches, for immigration enforcement searches. The person in the Richmond Police Department who was supposed to be monitoring, RPD had a policy in place that said ATF couldn't do that, but the RPD person in charge was apparently asleep at the job and didn't notice that it was happening or didn't care. And so these searches persisted for 4 months from February to June of last year until that person was relieved of their job for other reasons. And then a new person came in and on the first day noticed what was happening and they shut it down. But for 4 months, RPD, which was collecting data from the whole state, because Virginia law enforcement agencies share with each other, so the whole state was going to ATF through that agreement with RPD. False accusations. In 2025, police used ALPR cameras to accuse a Denver, Colorado woman of theft. She then had to prove her own innocence, which she was able to do because she had means and had cameras on her own vehicle. So they charged her with petty theft because she happened to be driving through this community in the same 15-minute window that something was stolen from a local store. She never went to the store, but because they read her license plate, saw that she wasn't from there, they arrested and charged her with petty larceny, just based on the time and the fact that her vehicle was not from that place. She was only able to prove her innocence because she had her own cameras on her car. She immediately recognized that someone without the means to do that would probably have been convicted in that situation. She's right about that. Surveilling protesters, the First Amendment. From June to October 2025, the Electronic Frontier Foundation identified 19 different agencies that logged dozens of searches associated with the No Kings protests, to include the Richmond Police Department. Unauthorized vendor sharing. In August of 2025, it was uncovered that Flock Safety was running a pilot program with the Department of Homeland Security's Customs and Border Protection and its law enforcement arm, Homeland Security Investigations, despite publicly stating otherwise. In other words, they were not telling the truth about what they were doing. They said they didn't have a program, and it turned out they did. There's a lot of people doing amazing work nationwide doing Freedom of Information Act requests who are uncovering the truth about what Flock Safety is really up to because they publicly don't say the truth. In 2025, predictive policing. In November of 2025, the Associated Press revealed that Border Patrol agents are using ALPRs as part of a predictive intelligence program to monitor millions of American drivers nationwide. Ethnic slurs. In 2025, it was discovered that Glendale, Arizona police use an ethnic slur to search a license plate surveillance database. Additional investigations into the use of the slur uncovered that between December 2024 and April 2025, Fairfax County, Virginia police also ran 150 searches using similar slurs. And I skipped over a reproductive rights one. In October of 2025, Flock and Texas law enforcement claimed an ALPR search was for a missing person when it was actually an investigation of a woman who was seeking reproductive care in another state. Texas and Tennessee have travel bans on reproductive health care. So if you leave that state to seek reproductive health care somewhere else and come back, you can be prosecuted for it. And that's what they were working with Flock to do. More recently, here in Virginia, in Central Virginia, an off-duty police officer was admitted to using the ALPR technology in that police department to stalk both his ex-girlfriend and his ex-girlfriend's new boyfriend, who happened to be a police officer. And when I read about this case, I thought, it's good that we uncovered the misuse, the abuse of the technology, but I wonder if it would have been uncovered if the victim hadn't been a police officer. Because that seems to be the only case we've heard about in Virginia so far. Okay. ALPRs in Virginia. I'm going to go through this really quickly. From 2010 to 2013, the state police were found to be using a massive database of license plates. Basically, they were just keeping the information forever. From all the ALPRs that they were using mounted in their vehicles, they were just holding on to that data. Ken Cuccinelli, some of you remember him when he was Attorney General, he's actually a big privacy advocate and said, this is illegal. You can't keep this data forever. There has to be some limit to the retention period. So he wrote an opinion saying that, and in spite of his opinion, oh, did I lose the, sorry about that. No? Uh-oh. Sorry, my computer went to sleep, but I can just tell the story. Despite the Attorney General's opinion, Fairfax County continued to use ALPRs. Restart, okay. As a result, there were a multitude of lawsuits and court decisions. And while that was happening in 2015, there were 2 bills introduced, one Republican, one Democrat, to put a limit on the retention, set it at 7 days, so that the state police and Fairfax County and others that were using ALPRs at the time would not be able to keep people's data indefinitely. Those bills passed. They had near unanimous support in the General Assembly, and Democratic Governor Terry McAuliffe vetoed it because the law enforcement lobby in Richmond is exceedingly strong. Politicians do not want to seem soft on crime, and so if the police ask them to do something, more often than not, they do it. And so McAuliffe vetoed it. They didn't override the veto, and no retention period. During the 2023 regular session, we had another Attorney General who had issued an opinion, Jason Miyares. The state police wanted to put their ALPRs up along the highways, along 60,000 miles of highways, and they weren't allowed to do that. And so Jason Miyares issued this opinion saying, no, you have to get express permission. I love ALPRs, Miyares said, but you have to get permission from the General Assembly if you're going to put them up along the highways. So Flock Safety hired their first lobbyist in Virginia, and this is really how we came to this work. We were not seeking out to be the surveillance people, but the anti-surveillance people, but Flock Safety came to Virginia in 2023 because they wanted to, do you want to get that back? They wanted to have a bill that would allow them to put the ALPRs up along all the highways. And so once we discovered what they were doing and told lawmakers about it, it was voted down. It had no regulations on it whatsoever. It would just allow for the massive expansion of surveillance. That bill has come back a couple of times. Each time they're trying to put more transparency on it without really addressing any of the problems that I've talked about so far in the presentation. In 2025, we did get a bill that passed and that Governor Youngkin signed. We were able to get the expansion piece taken out. So the state police and local law enforcement cannot put cameras up along the highways. They are allowed to put them in localities. But that is sort of where we are with ALPRs in Virginia right now. The retention period, Flock had asked for 30 days. The chiefs of police asked for 60 days, more than what Flock wanted. We said, how about 7 days? Because that's what you tried back in 2015. That's what Charlottesville was doing, and it was working all right in Charlottesville. Again, we didn't want the bill, but if we're going to have a bill, let's have the lowest retention period possible, because you're using a hot list most of the time. You don't need to be going back in time to do all this piecing together of people's lives and then charging them with crimes. So if you really say what you mean what you say when you say this is about human trafficking and missing stolen vehicles, then the hot list will do. New Hampshire has a 3-minute retention period, for example. So we asked for 7 days, Flock wanted 30, the police wanted 60, they landed on 21. So that's what we have now, 21 days. However, if the police tell you we have this great law that is really protecting you all and you should all feel safe, we don't. They're not following it is the problem, is one problem. So a newly released 2026 Crime Commission report shows that Virginia law enforcement agencies are not following the law that was just enacted last year. 13% of Virginia law enforcement agencies self-reported that they are continuously sharing ALPR data with other states in violation of the law. It's a Class 1 misdemeanor to do that under the law that was passed in 2025. 6% acknowledge they're continuously sharing with the federal government in violation of the law. It's a Class 1 misdemeanor. No one's being prosecuted. 35% admitted taking no public awareness measures. They're not telling you about it. They're supposed to be telling you about it. They're not doing that. And then fully 110 law enforcement agencies in Virginia out of the 361 that we have didn't even bother to respond to the survey. So we don't even know if they're breaking the law or following it. Okay, I'm going to pass it quickly to Stephen, and then I'll come back on why we oppose.
Hello, everyone. So as Rob said a minute ago, I am a criminology professor at CNU at Christopher Newport University. I'm also the director of our Center for Crime, Equity, and Justice and a board member of Justice Ford, Virginia. We produced this study, actually it's been a few months ago now. And the reason we were able to do this is a judge in the Eastern District of Virginia forced the release of all the locations of ALPR cameras in the Hampton Roads region. That has not happened anywhere else in the country. If you want to know where these cameras are located, you have two options right now. One is you just hope your department tells you, which most do not. In fact, Flock has these transparency portals that are a joke of transparency. There's no actual transparency about where they're at. Number two is deFlock. Anybody heard of deFlock in here? deFlock is great, but it's crowdsourced, and so there's always a margin of error that comes with that. Whereas there's always going to be more cameras that are reported on deFlock. We also risk where cameras are misreported. So somebody sees, a speed camera and reports it as an ALPR camera. And obviously, as you've learned from Rob, these cameras, surveillance in general, we oppose, but these cameras in particular bring a ton of harms with them. So we just happen to be lucky enough that this judge forced the release of these cameras where our university is located. So immediately we started mapping them. So we used GIS, if anybody's familiar with that technology. We mapped all the coordinates of the cameras. We then overlaid it with socio-demographic variables to see, are there clear patterns about where these cameras are at? There's going to be obvious patterns in our region, and I'll talk about why that matters in a second. The second thing we did is we brought a statistician on because when you see the maps, it's obvious like where these cameras are clustered at. But we wanted a statistician to run a ton of models to say, is there something we're missing? Like, is there some other variable that can explain where these cameras are deployed that we're not seeing? What we found is, no, the patterns that were obvious to the eye were the predictive variables. And for us, as you all probably can imagine, in the Hampton Roads region, if you want to know where ALPR cameras are at, the blacker a neighborhood is, the more cameras there are. The higher the poverty rates, the more cameras there are. And you'll see some of these top line, these are kind of our top line findings. I don't want to go through each of those because I know we want to focus on Harrisonburg tonight. But if you have one takeaway from our study, it's that in our region, if you want to know where the cameras are at, look at race, look at class. What we did, in fact, let me actually just go on to the maps because the maps are the most fun part. So when you look at this map, and one note, our paper, which is currently under review in a peer-reviewed journal, we have a preprint that's publicly available. I will gladly send it to all of you all. Also, all the data that we use for this analysis, we have also made publicly available. We believe in transparency, so you can analyze it as you see fit. But please talk to me after if you want our paper and our data, because we are glad to share it. But what you'll notice when you look at our paper, this is looking at race, and the darker the colors are, that is the higher the percentage of people of color in that neighborhood. Right away, you're going to notice clusters where the more people of color, the more cameras there are. In fact, the census tract with the most cameras is where Norfolk State is located, which is an HBCU in the Hampton Roads. There is no way to get on and off that campus without going through Flock cameras. It is impossible. The second map looks at class. So this is looking at poverty rates. The higher the rate of poverty in the neighborhood, the the more cameras there are. And there's a lot of correlation between race and poverty because of historical discrimination, but we treated each of these as independent variables first before we clustered them together. I think one of our other maps that's pretty telling, because Norfolk is its own special version of bad when it comes to surveillance, and you can see it here. So this is a formerly racial redlining map of Norfolk. If you look where the neighborhoods that were formerly racially redlined are almost all of the cameras in Norfolk. And so that tells us about the historical discrimination that's gone on in those neighborhoods and how now we are using these neighborhoods as our pinpoints of surveillance. One thing to note before, because probably right away you're thinking, okay, and we heard this from police leadership in the region. Well, race and class, but this is about crime, right? We keep hearing these crime fighting tools. In fact, the police chief of Newport News stated in the media, well, our locations, the reason we picked the locations we did is because of crime. We have been able, in fact, he said violent crime. So we pulled violent crime data at the same unit of analysis to see, okay, is there something to this? What we have found, and this is our second paper that's coming out, is our crime measures are not only less predictive than race and class, they're actually a negative predictor. In fact, if you only use crime to find out where the cameras are at, you're going to go to the wrong neighborhoods. And the reason you're able to see it when you zoom in on the data, because you have the census tracts with the most cameras in our region have almost no, they have some, but very little violent crime over the past couple years. And the one variable that's consistent among them all is race and class. Now, this is a bunch of stats I'm not going to bore you all with. In terms of our implications, we speak mostly in the paper to the implications of the race and class elements of this, because we think that's really what we're contributing here. But in terms for you all, there's a couple things I want to highlight before I hand it back to Rob. First is, we are the only people in the country that have done this because we're the only ones that were able to do it because there is no transparency when it comes to data about where these cameras are at and how they're being used. I cannot emphasize enough how little transparency there is in the data. I keep hearing over and over again, there are these wonderful tools to deter crime, which is a joke, but also to solve crimes, and we're using this all the time. So the response is, okay, give us the data. We can analyze it, and if what you're saying is true, then that'll hold up in the analysis, right? The data is what the data is, but they're not giving us that data. They're not being transparent with it. In fact, like I just said a minute ago, one of the major police narratives around violent crime in our region, we found out right away, did not hold up to scrutiny once we were able to get the data. So when it comes to your all's region, the location patterns are probably going to look different than the Hampton Roads. But one thing that is clearly shared is there is a lack of transparency here, and you add that into the abuses that Rob has talked about to this point, and I've struggled to find the right word for it. I don't understand how we're going to continue to put up more of these cameras when we don't have transparency and we don't have data to even support they supposedly do what law enforcement claims they do. You hear all the time about data-driven, evidence-based practices. These things are anything but data-driven. We are, at this point, having to rely on law enforcement. It's like the just trust me bro motto. It's making you safer, just trust us. Because they're not giving us data to be able to analyze it, number one. And we're just having to rely on vibes at this point. It's vibes and narrative, not data, not evidence. But one thing I will say before I hand it back over is we are not stopping on this because I think this is one of the most pressing issues of our day. So every bit of data we've been able to get a hold of, we are analyzing, and we are going to continue to come out with works from the empirical side to show what these cameras do, how they impact people, where they're being deployed, and we will continue to be transparent with our results in the data. So hopefully at some point we get better data, but in the meantime, we're going to have to keep fighting for it. Thank you.
Okay. You've probably guessed by now why we oppose ALPRs, but I want to state it very clearly. ALPRs radically transform the consequences of leaving home to pursue private life, create a tremendous opportunity for abuse. We oppose mass surveillance because of the serious and significant implications on our safety and our privacy, the increasing abuse by law enforcement and government, the disparate impacts on minority and immigrant communities, When we were able to kill the expansion in the bill last year at the General Assembly, it was because we could safely predict that the Trump administration was going to use ALPRs to disappear people off our streets and deport them. And not even, the governor hadn't even had a chance to put his signature on the bill before we got the first reporting from The Guardian that that's exactly what the Trump administration was doing. In a community in New York that had deemed itself a sanctuary community, they were actively trying to protect their immigrant communities, except they had installed ALPRs all over. And so what did the Trump administration do? They targeted the sanctuary community because they believe that's wrong, and then they used those ALPRs to find the people that they wanted to deport, to disappear and deport. And so that's exactly what they did. That was the argument that we used with lawmakers, that this is what the administration is going to do, so there's no reason to put these up on the highways, and that was how we were able to win that piece of the argument, at least. The potential this technology has to become another driver of mass incarceration, the growing costs of this new system on taxpayers, the unavoidable and ungovernable access ALPRs provide to law enforcement, private parties, other states, the federal government, to an immense amount of highly sensitive data, the long-term intentions of the private companies who have solicited electeds in our state to build an expansive, seamless system of surveillance nationwide. So I want to talk a little bit about each of these. There's little evidence that ALPRs are actually effective, as Stephen pointed out, or cost effective, and plenty of evidence of their abuse, misuse, and mistakes. So in spite of a well-orchestrated corporate media campaign by the vendors, there is actually no conclusive evidence that ALPRs are effective tools for solving serious crimes. One study found only 47 out of every 1 million scans revealed any potential connections to serious crimes. They lead to false positives. They put a financial burden on taxpayers. ALPRs threaten privacy rights. They are a digital dragnet that captures information about millions of people who've committed no crimes. All of our data, everyone who drove here, my car, Stephen's car, all of our data is in the database right now. We haven't committed a crime, but there it is for them to look at. Law enforcement can use photos from ALPRs for any criminal investigation. This is with the protective law that we passed. I'm putting protective in air quotes for everyone in the back. The protective law that was passed last year. Any criminal investigation, so a class 4 misdemeanor, jaywalking, littering, public intoxication, all of these things are crimes in Virginia that can be used as the hook for a criminal investigation to start looking at someone's background, where they've been, who they've been associating with, what houses they're going in and out of. If there's Ring camera footage in there, then they can start looking at cameras as well. There's no warrant requirement to obtain the LPR data. No officer has ever had to establish probable cause or swear to the facts in a warrant application and await the approval of a neutral judge to get access to it. By the way, we tried a warrant bill 2 years ago. It didn't really get anyone's attention. There are no meaningful restrictions on the ability of other states, agencies, and the federal government to access ALPR data through the use of subpoena or a court order. So if somebody wanted to subpoena the ALPR data that is in the Flock network in Virginia, Flock is an Atlanta, Georgia company. So they do business primarily in the state of Georgia. So if someone wanted to do a subpoena in Georgia for all the Virginia ALPR data, I don't know what's stopping them. There are no restrictions on the use of AI to generate algorithms to surveil groups of people. The one time that I was able to meet with representatives of Flock Safety 2 years ago now, after we had killed their bill in the General Assembly, they wanted to meet with us. And I asked them, after we'd gotten into the conversation, we were about an hour and a half into the conversation, I said, what would stop an enterprising sheriff in Southwest Virginia from creating or having, contracting with a tech engineer to create an algorithm that would allow that sheriff to put in a search to the Flock system for anyone with a pro-choice license plate, which we have in Virginia. So that if they wanted to cooperate with officials in Tennessee, which has a travel ban on reproductive health care, then they could just pass that information along to the Tennessee prosecutor who wanted it. And the Flock safety person said, well, our technology doesn't currently do that. ALPRs are used to target traditionally marginalized people. Racial disparities show up throughout the criminal legal system. Abby Tebow can tell you that. In who police interact with, who gets charged with a crime, who gets convicted for one, what the sentence they receive. Even the State Crime Commission concluded that ALPRs can lead to disparate impacts on minority communities. As Stephen said, they are concentrated in Black and brown communities, the exact same communities that already experience over-policing. The AI-enhanced technology will replicate the racial disparities, further exacerbating mass incarceration and the disparities in the criminal legal system. Chilling freedom of speech and assembly. So we've seen with the stuff in DC and New York, the No Kings protests using the Richmond Flock network. Mass surveillance can and has been used as a tool of oppression. It is used to chill speech and assembly and to control people's behavior. We cannot trust these companies who profit from the data they get about us. I met with one of your city councilors a few weeks ago, Danny Fleming, and I talked to him. Let the record reflect that I was not the one who laughed. And I talked to him about these companies, and I said, I just want to start out, Mr. Fleming, in saying that you are not the real customer here. This technology is coming to you very cheaply because it is going to be sold to other customers up the food chain. They're not interested in, they're interested in the city council insofar as it gets them into your city and gets their cameras up. But they want to use that to do other things. What those other things are, I think you can all imagine, but the federal government is a big customer of Flock because that data can be packaged and resold to other people and other entities with a lot more money than the Harrisonburg City Council. And I just wanted to frame the conversation that way because I think that often gets missed, that it's not this particular city. And so Harrisonburg has all its own unique and individual issues. And this is going to be so hard to fight against mass surveillance because it is such a problem. It's like climate change, right? Like it's such a problem of massive scale that any one person is not going to be able to do it on our own. We're going to have a lot more gatherings like this where people come together and say, this is not the state we want to live in. This is not the world we want to live in. And so I think I'm going to leave it there for right now, and we can get into questions. Thank you so much for your attention tonight.
I was wondering if you have any comments about like how easy it is to hack these cameras in Virginia.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So his question was about how easy it is to hack the cameras. Kelly and I actually had a discussion this afternoon about wanting to add that into the presentation. We just haven't gotten there yet. But yes, there is a YouTuber, Ben Jordan, who was not originally a YouTuber, but became a YouTuber once he figured out how easy it was to hack into Flock cameras. And was like, people should know about this because these cameras are going up everywhere. One stat I didn't mention, by the way, 48% of law enforcement agencies in Virginia now use ALPRs. That number is up dramatic. It's the fastest growing technology in law enforcement by far. It's not even, only body-worn cameras are used by more law enforcement agencies than ALPRs. But to your point, yes, they are so easily hackable. They don't use multi-factor authentication. So when I want to sign into my health insurance to see what my doctor bills are and look at my benefits, I need to let the health insurance company know that I am the person I say I am, and they send me a code, and then before I can log in. Flock doesn't require that for law enforcement. So there's an infamous documented case in Illinois where a detective was very ICE friendly and decided he would just share his Flock password with someone in DHS. And then they could just access Illinois' Flock system and therefore the nation's Flock system anytime they wanted to. And there was nothing to stop him because there was no annoying text that he got with a 6-digit code allowing him to requiring him to put that in before he could log in. So the detective, the ICE person could just get into the system anytime they wanted to. They're very easily hackable. Yeah, in the back.
Just with the amount of data that these things collect, do you have any, have you guys done anything about how easy it would be to just completely fabricate an actual crime?
Oh gosh, I hadn't thought of that one. The question was, everyone probably heard it, but given the amount of data, could they fabricate a crime? I mean, I think that Denver situation pretty much encapsulates it, where, I mean, there was allegedly a crime committed that day, and then they just went out and arrested the first person they could find that was there at the time and charged her, and the only reason she got out was because she had cameras on her own car. Yep.
Yeah, years ago, I had complained about the Harrisburg Redevelopment Housing Authority having cameras. They have just mass surveilled the whole black neighborhood, which is the northeast neighborhood, was historically black neighborhood. And I was told there was nothing the city council could do about it because they put the cameras on their property, on the housing authority property.
Okay.
Well, but still they can see the whole neighborhood. I have a apartment complex across the street from my home with cameras on it that can face in my house. So what can be done about it? I'm sure there's flocks all over the place, and I just haven't seen them because, I mean, they said it's mostly in the predominantly black neighborhood.
Do you know what kind of cameras those are?
Tsunami. The tsunami camera.
Tsunami camera.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Okay, so the question was about all the cameras that are being put up on by the housing authority, by the public housing, and then those cameras face out. I'm in a signal chat with a bunch of folks from around the state, and there's a gentleman in Suffolk who found one camera, a flock camera, that was pointed at a kid's playground. And just, why? What are you doing? Yeah.
I haven't seen a flock camera, but if there was some in my neighborhood, I would know it. I should be able to see it. I never even heard about flock cameras until recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. The question about like public housing complexes, I didn't mention that, but that's also like in terms of that's one of the strongest predictor variables for us in the region is they often surround. And so the cameras that we were able to access in that release are any that were publicly funded, so taxpayer dollars were used for the contracts. But in the Hampton Roads, they were always surrounding public housing complexes. So I would assume the patterns are the same. We've started doing some basically the multi-level mapping that we did in Hampton Roads. We've been using deFlock to do other places, like Richmond, for example, and the patterns are the same because we'll often hear, well, that's just a Hampton Roads thing, it's different here. The patterns are looking pretty I mean, they're gonna vary every now and again. For the most part, they're predictable. And one of the places, even if you take race and class out of it, it's public housing complexes.
The question is whether the cameras can record other things other than just license plates. They're supposedly triggered by the appearance of the license plate and then take the photo, but it's of everything that is happening at that point in time. So if, on a highway, you're just gonna probably be getting cars, most of the, hopefully, 24 hours a day. But on a local street, that could be, a cyclist passing through, or a pedestrian, or a dog, whatever. It's not just going to be the back of the car. It is a photo, and then the license plate piece of the photo gets converted into machine readable text. But everything else, the photo remains just like any other photo. Yeah.
Okay. As you can see here, I'm the only Spanish speaking here. I'm the only Spanish from Honduras. I would like to see more more friends here. I think you mentioned something about how ICE have access to this kind of cameras and how they can use it to accuse or look for immigrants. Can you expand more on that?
Sure, yeah, the question's about how ICE can use these types of cameras to do immigration enforcement. I mean, one thing they were doing was using cameras in Home Depot and Lowe's and just putting them in those parking lots where, I think sort of common knowledge in a lot of the country that that's where people who do construction labor will show up looking for work, and then they'll figure out what those license plates are and track those as they move through the community, so that if they suspect that someone is showing up looking for construction work, they might be an undocumented person, and so they'll then track that license plate until they can pull the person over.
How can we be protected? How can we?
We can take the cameras down.
Yes.
Following up on that, can you say more about communities that have been successful in taking cameras down? What are the factors that have contributed to that, and how has that happened? Like, what are our next steps?
Yeah, so the next piece of this project, we got the presentation up on the website. Now the next piece is developing a local toolkit so that folks like you in your community can take the necessary steps, contact the right people. I mean, I think having conversations with your city councilors is super important. He's asking about next steps, what communities can do. Having conversations with your city council, or if you live in the county, having conversations with your board of supervisors and saying, this is not the type of state I want to live in. I don't want to live in a place where I don't feel like my neighbors are safe. I don't feel like my friends are safe. That's not public safety to me. Public safety is knowing that the people I care about are going to be safe, and these cameras are the opposite of that. I think having that conversation in very plain language with them, I mentioned I've had a conversation with one. I think Hannah's had several conversations with city council members to try and help them understand. The problem is that local officials in particular are so deferential to their law enforcement agencies. So you're going to have to come with some knowledge about how the cameras work, how they're abused. So that's the idea behind our presentation, is to sort of give you some of the information that you need to push back when they say things like, we only put cameras where there's crime. No, you don't, actually. You put them where the black people and the poor people live. The cops in Virginia will never, we've already got documented cases of Virginia law enforcement misusing this technology. We passed this law in 2025 and that protects everybody. You're breaking the law right now. Law enforcement agencies are committing class 1 misdemeanors, and the state won't even tell us which law enforcement agencies are breaking the law, so we don't know who to prosecute for those crimes. Who would prosecute the police? Hopefully local prosecutors would, but they aren't doing it. Sorry, I saw a question in the back. Yeah.
This will have to be the last question for now, but Rob has agreed to stay after.
Can I get mine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Monica Roberts. I'm one of the local city council members, and I just wanted to make 2 comments. One, I wanted to piggyback off of what Ms. Thomas said. If we take the cameras down, the problem still exists in neighborhoods that we live in. So the problem may go away for the rest of you all, but the problem remains, which has been historically a problem. The second comment I like to make is, although we may be deferential to HPD and working with those offices, we also, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, pay a lot of attention to community and civic engagement and listening to what our constituents want. So my ears are not closed to what's going on. I'm very aware, because I try to stay in contact with folks like Hannah who say, hey, do you realize it may be a problem here? So I don't want people to think that we are sitting by just saying, oh, well, we have to do what HPD suggests that we do. No, what we do is what our constituents want us to do. That's what we do.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Roberts, and I appreciate your point there. Again, Rob will stay after for more questions. Hello, friends and neighbors. My name is Linda. I'm one of your neighbors who lives here in Harrisonburg. Are you feeling concerned? I mean, I'm feeling concerned. I'm feeling concerned. Are you feeling angry? I'm pretty angry. And I'm glad to hear that, Councilmember Robinson, that the council members' ears are still open because we've been trying. Hannah and others have been trying. So the city of Harrisonburg installed 30 mass surveillance cameras without public input or our consent. Tonight, you've heard why we should all have deep concerns about the use of flock cameras in our community. Automatic license plate readers are an AI surveillance technology designed to indiscriminately track, collect, store the movements of every traveler who passes the cameras, even though the vast majority of us have not committed any crimes. Despite the counterclaims of our chief of police, the data the flock cameras collect about everyday people have been provided to law enforcement, private parties, other states, and the federal government. This poses a serious threat to our safety, liberty, and privacy and violates our Fourth Amendment rights. Nationally, flock surveillance data, as you've heard tonight, nationally, flock surveillance data has been used over 4,000 times by ICE to kidnap and terrorize our communities. Chief Tucker, our police chief, tells us that Virginia State Law HB 2724 makes it illegal for our data to be shared with the federal government or outside agencies. But what you've heard here tonight from Rob is the truth is the federal government is not constrained by Virginia's ALPR law. As a result, HB 2724 actually provides no meaningful restrictions on the ability of other states, private parties, and the federal government to access the Virginia ALPR data through subpoenas or search warrants, including, as Rob said, subpoenas and warrants issued to Flock's headquarters in Georgia. Reassurances that our data is safe and secure are not credible based on experiences across the country. We don't trust Flock, to be honest, with our HPD or our city council members. Flock camera misreadings, as you've heard tonight, have caused innocent people to be detained, mistreated, abused, traumatized, and have their lives upended. And Flock takes no accountability for these mistakes. Flock cameras don't make us safer, they make us targets. They erode community trust and make us more vulnerable. I think you've heard, you might not know, we have been working, trying to persuade our city council. We made efforts to educate them. Many of us testified or offered public comments on March 10th, 35 of us offered our concerns about the flock cameras. Currently, over 1,800 people have signed an online petition or paper petition to demand the city council cancel the flock contract. We've met with the police chief. We've met with our council members, not all of them, but we have been meeting with them. We asked them if we could speak at one of the city council meetings, and we were told no. And that's why we organized this. We were told we could not speak. We organized this meeting. So currently, you should know that we are working on this. We thought we would have our council members behind us, and we need your help. The city council seems persuaded. I'm glad your ears are open. But for now, they seem persuaded that the chief's arguments in favor of flock that diminish our concerns, ignore the evidence from other communities' experiences, go against the evidence of our Virginia State Crime Commission, and ignore our current Harrisonburg context, where in the valley, nearly 400 people have been kidnapped by ICE, and the continuing presence of ICE is an ongoing trauma for us, for our neighbors, and for minoritized communities that people we live with every day. It's heartbreaking what's happening. Yet, they persist with the flock cameras. We have to work against all forms of mass surveillance. We know that flock is not the only one. We have to work against all forms. But ending the city's contract with flock is a straightforward, easily implementable way to work toward that goal. I was at a meeting recently where some people were surprised when I was talking about this meeting and trying to turn people out. They were so surprised that the city council was not currently working to cancel the flock contract. They said, well, how could that be? They're Democrats. We have 1,400, they didn't know about the paper petitions that we had. There were 14 people that signed the petition. How could the city council not be with us? This should be smooth sailing. Huh. So I want to be clear about a couple things that you've already heard tonight. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is a bipartisan issue that affects all of us. People on both sides of the aisle across the country are working on this issue, and they're trying to remove these cameras from our community. Second, as you've heard, the police have a tremendous amount of power in any community, including ours. People generally tend to trust and want to trust the head of their law enforcement and what they tell them. We want to trust it. We want to believe it. And right now, our police chief is telling our community, he's telling our city council that these cameras are keeping us safe. And that narrative is a powerful one. If we want to be successful in countering this narrative, we've got to engage more people. Not just more folks willing to sign the petition, but more folks willing to roll up their sleeves and think deeply about this issue and how to educate and enlarge large numbers of people, community members, our neighbors, to take action. This can be won. Charlottesville won. Stanton won. Recently, Bloomington, Indiana just won this fight. 57 other communities around the country have cut ties with deFlock. We are a community that passed a ceasefire resolution with a leader of the city, and that same technology being trained on Palestinians is being trained on us, and we can't cancel our deFlock cameras? It's infuriating. We can join these other communities that have canceled deFlock, but only if enough people decide something to do about it. So here's where the call to action starts, because like Rob said, we've got to push this campaign. If you're upset about the things you've heard tonight and want to do something about it, please join us. We're having another in-person planning meeting where we're rolling up our sleeves, we're working on this campaign, May 11th at 6 o'clock. And at that meeting, we're going to talk about next steps to get our city council to cancel these contracts. How do we build momentum between now and January 27th when the deFlock contract is scheduled to be renewed? So we have some clipboards that we should be passing around. The clipboards will be, there's two at each table. Please sign up if you want to join our planning meeting. There's also an option to check if you can't come on May 11th, but you want to be involved, you want to be active, please check that box. Please print legibly because we want to reach out to you. We really have to have a big movement. You know, we can't just have 35 people, the city council. We need our 1,800 people signed up, you know, and be there through the whole night, if that's what it takes. If we have to go to the city council doors en masse, if that's what it takes. So please sign up on these sheets that we're passing around last time. Let's see. And you can also sign up. So each of you should have a program. There's other opportunities to get involved this way. You can also sign up. There's a QR code in this program about May 11th. May 11th is a full 3 weeks away. If you're ready to take action tonight, please also do 2 more things that you can do tonight. On your program, there is also a QR code. There's a lot of QR codes. We're trying to make this easy for people. There's a QR code. The lower one on the center fold is the petition. We need more people. We have over 1,800 people that have signed the online and the paper petition. We need more people to sign our petition, just to show the city council where the power is, that the power is in the people, and the people don't want this. We don't want this. So so please pass this around. The other thing we would love you to do tonight is there's another QR code for you to email the city council. We set up an Action Network account that would make it very easy for you to click on that, put your name in. It's pre-populated with a message that repeats what you've learned tonight, but you can delete all that and write your own points. But please email the city council member tonight or first thing in the morning to let them know that you oppose this, because I don't really think they realize how many people are against this. And a lot of people that I've talked to already kind of assumed the city council wouldn't support it because they generally thought that they've been a supportive city council, and they've been shocked to learn about the city council's commitment to these plot cameras so far. So the other thing I want to mention, Nadia mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we have baskets. If you want to help defray the costs of this effort that we're doing, you know, we all kind of bought the stuff, and childcare and all of this stuff. It'd be great if you could help to support to defray some of the costs for us and our organizing. We're all volunteers. We need to build this movement, people. Friends, neighbors. We have to build this movement in our city to overcome the resistance of our city council, to recognize the severe dangers these cameras pose to our safety, liberty, and privacy. Every day these cameras remain in our city is a day that we cede power to the state by providing data that can be used against us, whether or not we violated any laws. The data empowers authoritarian figures. Think of our context. This data empowers authoritarian figures to exercise control over us and gives them a powerful tool to affect their totalitarian ambitions. This is not an exaggeration, I'm so sorry to say. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We hope to see you on May 11th. Sign the petition, email the city council, and let's stay fighting in this.